You descend a narrow shaft beneath the Giza plateau, air thick with dust, water ticking in the dark. Your light catches bones arranged in unsettling patterns, black resin smeared across massive coffins, and 30 meters down, a granite sarcophagus perched on a hand-cut island inside a flooded cavern. Herodotus called it a legend. Archaeologists found it exactly as described. Is this a tomb, a ritual machine, or the hidden switchboard of Giza itself? The whisper that wouldn't die. Giza's greatest secrets were always supposed to tower above the sand, but the earliest clue to a buried underworld is written by a traveler. Around 450 BCE, Herodotus recorded an account of a pharaoh's chamber encircled by water, a coffin resting on an island in the dark. Many dismissed it as embroidered lore, the ancient habit of filling blanks with glamour. The desert has a way of protecting what it chooses, and for 2 millennia the whisper lingered without proof. In 1933, an Egyptian archaeologist, Salim Hassan, opened a vertical shaft near Khafra's causeway and immediately hit a problem that felt older than hieroglyphs: water that refused to be managed. Pumps clattered, hoses throbbed, men hauled until their arms burned, and still the groundwater crept back with the patience of stone. After years of expensive struggle, Hassan conceded the fight. The shaft swallowed the lights, and the whisper kept its poise. Technology changed the conversation. In 1999, Dr. Zahi Horace brought modern pumps, stronger illumination, and a team prepared to descend in shifts. The water retreated grudgingly. 6 meters down, the first chamber revealed itself, a small room cut cleanly into bedrock, undecorated and unnarrated. Egypt's tombs normally talk titles, prayers, lists of offerings, flawless vignettes of gods performing what eternity requires. Here the stone refused to speak. The room felt like punctuation rather than prose, a built pause, a vestibule between daylight and obligation. The air was stale and warm. Dust stung the nose and settled on the tongue. The shaft continued below, a vertical invitation carved with uncompromising intent. A few shreds of pottery, a smear of resin here and there, and a geometry stripped of ornament. The first chamber announced 2 things at once: restraint and direction. Whatever mattered was not here. The experience being engineered required descent. Team members clipped onto the ladder and leaned into the dark, boots tapping rungs that sounded too far apart. Every foot of depth stole a fraction of outside time. Herodotus's rumor now shared space with the throb of modern pumps and the rasp of rope through a descender. In the silence between those noises, the stone began to make its point. If the walls would not tell a story, perhaps the bones below would. If the first room is a threshold, what happens when the archaeology stops being quiet and the human remains start arguing back? A room that keeps its dead in pieces. 12 meters below the first chamber, light opened onto a room that looked almost disciplined in its strangeness. The cuts in the limestone were steady, the plan symmetrical, niches opening like dark mouths. 2 massive stone sarcophagi sat in those niches, anonymous and uninscribed. One had been muscled across an eastward opening, as though the builders preferred a coffin to a door. Whatever lay did not require visitors. The floor read like a palimpsest: pottery sherds, chips of stone, and bones. At first glance the scatter suggested intrusion, later burials, vandalism, disorder. Then the pattern asserted itself. Many of the bones belonged only to the right half of bodies: right arms, right ribs, right legs. Not full skeletons, not random breakage, but a repeating asymmetry that resisted accident. An orthopedic specialist later consulted by the team confirmed the bias. Either someone had been making an argument with anatomy, or a ritual had settled into habit here for a long time. Egyptian religion is comfortable with drama. The central myth of Osiris involves dismemberment and reassembly, death and sovereignty achieved through careful, loving work. Priests mirrored that grammar in festivals and offerings. The right-side bias might be a local dialect of that cosmic story, an encoded rite we can see but cannot overhear. A different possibility felt colder. Perhaps later custodians misunderstood an older program and repeated what they thought they saw, preserving the shape but not the script. The sarcophagi themselves deepened the mystery. Without inscriptions, they declined to identify occupants or dedicate prayers. Instead, each was streaked with a black varnish that glistened where the flashlight lingered. Laboratory analysis of scrapings found a resinous recipe familiar from mummification: oils, beeswax, plant resins, bitumen. Black is not merely color in the Nile Valley, it is the name of the life-giving silt, the hue of regeneration, an epithet of Osiris. Here, pigment was policy. Coat the coffin in the color of rebirth, and the stone participates in the god's cycle. There remained the practical objection that makes engineers raise their eyebrows. How do you install multi-ton sarcophagi in a chamber accessible only by a narrow vertical shaft? One answer speculates on sand hydraulics: set the heavy block atop packed sand, then bleed the sand from underneath through small openings, lowering the mass in controlled stages. Another proposes that the chamber was cut around a prepositioned block lowered from the surface while the shaft was still much wider, only later being trimmed to its final dimensions. None of the answers are fully satisfying. All require choreography and forethought that feel almost modern in their precision. The bones continued to insist on their pattern. The varnish refused to be merely preservative. And the blocked opening kept its secret. The second chamber did what the best middle acts do: it raised the stakes and tightened the rules. If devotion can be measured in tons and ritual in right-hand bones, what waits below a coffin dragged across a doorway to keep you out? Where myth turns architectural. Nearly 30 meters beneath the desert, the temperature leaned cool and the noise changed. Water absorbed and returned sound until the room felt populated by echoes. The ladder ended in a small landing, and then headlamps spilled themselves into a space that refused to be ordinary. The floor halted at the edge of a flooded cavern. The surface was black glass stitched with ripples from the pump's pulse. Rising from that water was a rectangular platform, an island cut from bedrock. And on the island rested a granite sarcophagus, partly submerged, flanked by 4 squat pillars like sentinels that had learned patience. Herodotus's rumor, so long dismissed as traveler's poetry, suddenly looked like fieldwork. A coffin on an island in an underground lake is not a common motif. In Egyptian cosmology, the primeval waters of Nun cradle creation, the Nile's annual flood kills and gives life, Osiris's rebirth provides the grammar for seasons and sovereignty. To wade toward a coffin on a man-made island is to perform a story older than writing, the passage through danger to a seat among gods. When the lid was lifted long ago, nothing like a royal mummy greeted modern eyes. The granite box was empty, or emptied. But emptiness in a ritual context is not failure, it is instruction. The chamber reads like a cenotaph for Osiris, a place built to host rites of renewal rather than contain a single person. The 4 pillars may echo the guardians of cardinal space, stationing order around the place where water, stone, and intention meet. The atmosphere was undeniable. Torches or lamps would have turned the roof into a mirror of restless light, the sound into a crowd. Standing in water up to the thigh with a chant on the air and a god's color on the stone, a priest would not need a single carved line to understand his role. The architecture is the text. The body is the reader. Narrow crawlways branch from the flooded chamber like nerves from a spine. Their orientations, one trending toward the Great Pyramid, another toward the Sphinx, are tantalizing and troubling. They are too tight for adult passage in their present state and too deliberate to dismiss as accidents. If they once ran clear, the Osiris shaft may have been part of a network that linked the plateau's monuments underground, a set of arteries for movement, sound, water, or meaning. The waterline itself tells a long story. Stains on the stone mark levels high and low, implying centuries of fluctuation. That variability argues against a static, sealed burial and toward a living ritual landscape designed to interact with the groundwater, to dramatize the Nile underground as the heavens are dramatized above. If the room behaves like an instrument, then the builders were engineers of experience. What do the materials, acoustics, and cuts reveal about their craft?